Alright, so listen. If you couldn't tell from the title of this video, this is gonna be a wild one. Not gonna lie to you. This comic came out in I think the early 1970s. When racial tensions were high between groups and all that. But it's an important part of comic history that I want to cover. Keep in mind that back then, bathroom segregation had only just ended in like the mid 60s. So this wasn't too far removed from that. So this is an origin story of a nation in Africa called Rayarda. I think I'm saying that right. I don't think this place was ever mentioned more than one other time than this comic. So yeah, and this will give you also a little extra history on Wakanda, and it's because it's a nation in Wakanda apparently. Maybe not anymore because this was never mentioned again. So with that all out of the way, our story begins with Ben Grimm and Johnny Storm getting into an argument with each other, as they do. But Ben literally destroys part of a room's wall and throws it at him. Like, man, Ben back then didn't give a fudge, huh? Like, he didn't care if lives were endangered or anything. You're just getting straight hands for simple disagreements. So Johnny dodges it, but it does wreck like a nearby billboard. Thankfully, Johnny is able to melt it using a combination of, I guess fire and an industrial chimney that was nearby or something. The two of them get back to fighting when, Mr. Fantastic and Susan Storm has to, interrupt them. Susan brings up the very point that I just made about, there was literally innocent people around that were endangered. And Ben is just like, it's all good. I knew the kid was going to melt it. But it's like, yeah, but Ben, like, what about the billboard you just destroyed? Like, what about all the property damage you just caused? Like, dude, you can't just do that. You can't just throw part of a building at somebody. Like, I get that, no one died, but that can't be the only requirement to not do something that violent. Anyway, it's a bit of a debate about who's going to clean up the mess that Ben just made. But thankfully, Reed, Mr. Fantastic, has a new invention. And it's called Auntie, automatic neuro robot in charge of tidying. Wait, what? Okay, hold on. I'm reading my notes. Automatic neuro robot in charge of tidying with increased efficiency. That's a mouthful. Like, okay, I see where you were going with that. But I feel that this naming was a little bit of a stretch for an acronym. I'm not gonna lie to you. Also, I doubt this thing was ever seen again. I couldn't find any info on it. So this was back in the day when they would just like throw random stuff at things and not think of like continuity at all. And it was like someone just had, like, the writer just had an idea. It was like, oh, let's do this. And like, yeah, it never caught on. No other writer grabbed it. So I think, unfortunately, Auntie here is a relic of a time long past. But anyway, for the this short comic that she's there, Auntie, it turns out is really good at cleaning up. So they, let it, I guess, basically fix the structural integrity that Ben Grimm 100% damaged by breaking apart that room. Or maybe not. Maybe it's fine. I mean, listen, I'm not in construction. I don't, maybe you can just rip apart a wall, and it just be totally fine. And I don't mean just like break a hole in it. I mean like the entire wall. Like, yeah, maybe you could just do that and you just repair it later. Anyway, there's no time to think about that, because it turns out Reed Richards was on the phone with the chief advisor of Wakanda, and he explains that a few days ago, a private plane crash landed in Wakanda, and that T'Challa, or AKA Black Panther, was kind enough to take them in for them to recover. But unfortunately, the two men on board, they immediately betrayed him and took something that T'Challa invented called Vibrotron. And this is another one of those things that I don't think will ever come up again in comics ever, so you don't have to remember it. That's just how these comics were back in the day. But anyway, this Vibrotron thing, apparently it uses vibranium as an energy source. This is all going to be explained later, but for right now, yeah, that's what's going on. They stole a very important tool from Wakanda. So the two men that took it, they fled to Rudyarda. I'm never going to get used to saying that. Rudyarda. And T'Challa followed in pursuit, but hasn't been seen in 2 days. So normally the people of Wakanda would go there to get him, themselves, but Rudyarda is one of the last remaining nations that still suffers from white supremacy. Black people can't really go there without getting in trouble, it turns out. So Mr. Fantastic, he's in the middle of some, important, super duper whooper important experiments. So he sends Ben and Johnny to the nation to investigate. I mean, okay, Johnny I get, right? Handsome, blonde, white guy, I get it. He's not gonna attract the wrong kind of attention, but isn't Ben Grimm, isn't he like a literal rock man? So no one from Wakanda can go on this, on this mission, because they no one from Wakanda can go on this mission like inconspicuously, because they're black, right? Okay, that I think we're all on the same page on that. But a rock man is going to just walk in with no issue, and he's not going to draw any attention or anything. Oh, okay. That's what we're doing. This is what we're doing right now. So, this duo board a plane to Africa together, and won't you know it? The plane is being hijacked. So, just so you know, this whole segment that you're seeing, the whole like plane being hijacked and all that, this has absolutely nothing to do with the plot whatsoever at all. Like, you could just remove this whole section and the plot would remain exactly the same. The robber guy who is doing the robbery of this plane, he does not come back in the story. Like, I feel like this was filler. Because they needed X amount of pages, and like, oh shoot, well, we need to get some pages on, we need to get some pages here, so they just threw this in. But I will say, it's honestly cool seeing Johnny and Ben work together to stop this guy. Like Johnny, he melts the guy's gun, so the guy actually ends up pulling a grenade from his coat, and then the thing just freaking no-sells the grenade like it's nothing. He just like palms it. It's really cool. And it's only super cool because how nonchalant Ben Grimm does it. He's in this like super oversized suit and just snuffing a grenade. I mean, it's a nice scene. I'm glad it's there. It just doesn't do anything for the story. But as soon as they get to, this nation of Rudyarda or whatever, as soon as they get there, we can see the racial segregation of the nation right away. There's signs that basically separate Europeans from coloreds, and we can see both, Ben and Johnny, voicing their displeasure with that fact. Ben actually has some issues getting a cab ride. So he decides to literally pick up the back half of a car to get a ride for the two of them. T'Challa's aide calls back, and he told them the location of one of the guys who stole the Vibrotron, or whatever it's called. I gotta say, Ben wastes no time in pleasantries when they find this guy. He just immediately knocks the guy on his butt by forcing the door open and starts to intimidate him. The guy gives up his partner, pretty quickly though, since apparently his partner double-crossed him. He tells them that they were going to sell the Vibratron at like this, to someone at this like abandoned metalworks facility at midnight. And now the next two scenes can only occur in the 70s comic, in the 1970s comic. So the guy who they just intimidated secretly pulls a gun on them. And so he pulls a gun on a guy made of literal rock and another guy made of flames. Why did he think this was gonna work? I don't know, but the next scene that occurs after that, Ben Grimm, he starts to do that thing people do when they're about to sneeze. And then he sneezes from the place being dusty, and the sheer force of the sneeze knocks the guy out. Like, what? I mean, alright. Like, the thing, like, he has some mad flexes of strength in this comic already, and, this has been pretty cool. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, this kind of dumb, but seeing Ben just, like, sneeze a guy into unconsciousness, it's a twofold of what the heck am I reading, and also the thing is pretty cool. So anyway, Ben Glaze aside, the two of them, they finally get to the prison that Black Panther is being held in, and they're actually able to free him. And as soon as he's freed, he knocks out two guards, and he proclaims that T'Challa proclaims that he is now Black Leopard. Weird. All right, so for the uninitiated here, so this was a thing that happened briefly. Black Panther went through this name change of Black Leopard for a little bit. So Marvel didn't want Black Panther being associated with, the Black Panthers, who was a kind of a radical black group back then, who stood for, black rights, but not always in the most, let's say ethical means, right? So they tried changing Black Panther's name to Black Leopard. As you can imagine, this didn't really stick that well. But anyway, we can see Black Panther. He kind of explains that in this comic. He says that he can't condemn or condone what the Black Panthers are doing, but he wants to be known as Black Leopard now. So yeah, so they're like, okay, fine, we'll call you Black Leopard, I guess. So what happens next is almost kind of like a comedy skit. So what we have right now is we have a man in a cat suit, a walking rock man, and a bright blonde white male in a skin tight light blue suit, and they're all trying to sneak around this city at night. And the crazy part is that they don't get noticed. They don't get noticed doing this. How, I don't know, but it's here that T'Challa, he explains a few things. First, we learn what Vibratron is. It's a device that uses the vibrating energy of vibranium to disintegrate any metal at which it's aimed at. This is a pretty overpowered tool. I can see why it wasn't brought up again. I mean, could this break adamantium or something? I have no idea, but I think it's a little too overpowered to be used in regular comics. So yeah, I don't think this was ever seen again. But, let me know in the comments if you have. I'd be super interested in, even making another video around the Vibratron, the history of Vibratron, I guess. So if you have seen this tool in another comic, let me know. I couldn't find anything else on it though. But yeah, so as far as why Black Panther, got arrested in the first place, he actually explains that here. And it's because he forgot his ID. So apparently every black who is in the city must have an ID on them at all times or risk getting locked up. So Black Panther, he allowed himself to get locked up because, there was civilians nearby and he didn't want any of them to get hurt. But it's like, man, dude, you forgot the most important thing of this nation. How did you do that? How did that happen? Regardless, despite how funny it is that Black Panther, one of the third or the eighth most smartest guy, seventh, I don't know what ranking is, but the seventh most smartest guy in Marvel universe, forgets his, ID in a nation that strictly requires ID. Anyway, the trio, they venture into the metalworks facility that the deal was gonna go down, and they managed to track down Jeff Roberts. Why did I say that weird? Jeff Roberts, who was one of the people who stole the Vibratron. He also looks just completely different than he did in early panels, but whatever, it's not like any of these people ever appear again. Maybe this is a completely different character and I just misunderstood it, but yeah, again, I don't think you're gonna see any of these people again. They're not important for Black Panther lore or anything like that. So after catching this guy, they notice a helicopter coming down, but it doesn't make any sound. So can you guess who the big bad villain of this comic is? Who the main guy who is buying, this Vibratron and doing all these shady midnight deals? Can you look? We both know who it is. Like, Black Panther only has like two, maybe three notable villains here, right? I mean, it's Claw. Okay, there you go. The surprise ruined. Sorry, but I gotta say, Claw actually gives these three more trouble than I thought he would. I mean, sure, he's important to, Black Panther and all that, but he's kind of just like a D-list kind of villain to me. So him taking out these three, and then knocking out Johnny Storm was a pretty, impressive feat. Like, what? Another thing he does is he just straight up murks the guy who stole the Vibratron. The guy tries to get away, and yeah, he's dead. Like, it's probably just one of the few times someone dies in a comic and they're just never coming back. He's just dead. The next thing Claw does is he covers Ben in rubble, but this actually works to Ben's benefit since he's able to reach out from under the rubble and surprise Claw by breaking his claw. I guess that's what it's called. I'm assuming it's called the Claw, his weapon. So Black Panther, or rather Black Leopard, finishes him off after that. So after, stopping, another world-ending plot, the police come, and, of course they're gonna do the typical thing. Wow, you guys are so amazing. You guys are awesome. Great job. Thank you, Grim, and thank you, Johnny. And then Johnny is like, what about T'Challa and all this? And you know what? What do you know it? The police are actually racist in this nation. with everything we've seen so far. I don't think that that was a stretch. But yeah, when Johnny says that, the police are like, ooh, well, T'Challa, you're not actually supposed to be, on this side of town after dark. I mean, I'm not gonna ask you for your ID or anything. I know you just saved the world, but them's the rules. I gotta say, Yarda is crazy. These people are crazy. God saves the world, and they're just like, yeah, but you're black though. So anyway, to wrap this up, these last 2 pages are actually what made me really appreciate this comic and why this video exists. So Ben gets pissed off at what they just said to T'Challa, and with the encouragement of Johnny, he rips apart one of the walls that has like 2 separate doors, one for European, one for coloreds, and they all walk out together. So yeah, I think that was a very touching moment. I feel this comic, I feel like it means a lot, especially back then. I'm banking on the fact that just this comic existing back then was probably a bold statement, I'm sure. Coming from a comic book at the time, it was really touching, and it showed a lot of character from the Thing and Johnny. So I really enjoyed this comic despite all the seriousness, silliness, sorry, and plot holes. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the comic too. Personally, it was a fun read. And I'm glad I was able to make a video about it. It was nice to see, Marvel putting out positive vibes, even, way back in the day. In any case, let me know if there's, any other comics you want me to cover or take a look at. Don't forget to don't forget, I can't speak. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that. And in any case, take care, and I am out.